again. Okay, so we're here for 2 more talks. Today they're about our parish life and our parish priests. For the first talk, the questions to keep in mind are: how did you live your parish life when you were growing up? Were you involved in the parish, and how? And how do you live it now? So, parish life. Marcelina was not just involved in her own family's needs, even as great as they were, and especially after the death of her father. She was also involved in the life and needs of the families of the parish and those surrounding the parish. Having learned from her mother the value of her faith and generosity, it was easy for her to find in the community around her those whose needs exceeded her own, and to seek to answer those needs. She readily answered the Lord's invitations to help others, and her involvement increased with the arrival of the new parish priest, Don Carlo Capini. The parish of Pianello del Lario is under the patronage of St. Martin of Tours, that great saint who, still a catechumen, gave half his cloak to a poor beggar. He was a soldier, and cutting his military cloak in half and giving it away was almost sacrilege at the time. Yet he felt compelled to help. And Christ rewarded him by appearing to him that evening dressed in the half-cloak and marveling that here was one who, not yet baptized, was very Christian. After this dream, Martin rushed to hurry to finish his studies so he could receive baptism. The saint's example of generosity was not lost on Marcelina. She too gave of what she had without counting the cost. Later, her generosity would almost cost her her life, but for now, it was the way for her to expand her heart and her field of work. Feeling the need to pray and to promote prayer, Marcelina, after obtaining her mother's permission, fixed her bedroom in such a way as to be able to welcome some friends during the feast days. There they prayed and sang, read spiritual readings, and meditated. Soon, Marcelina's good example spread to others, and other groups formed in other houses. When the little groups began to increase in number, they began to form one larger group. The parish priest welcomed them into the oratory next to the church. Marcelina was the natural leader of this group. With each step, the Lord was preparing Marcelina for much greater things. Now, looking at my parish growing up, it was dedicated to Our Lady of Lourdes, and our family was quite involved, at least while I was growing up. My brothers were altar boys, though neither of them continued to frequent the church much after elementary school. My mom was a catechist, and I used to love it when she brought home some of the worksheets she had left over from her class. I would diligently work on them, and cutting and coloring and pasting. I remember particularly a coloring book about Don Bosco, which I loved very much. I also remember reading about he used to perform magic tricks for the kids just hanging around, as a way to gain their attention and friendship, so he could then teach them about God and his love for them. After reading that, I learned a trick too, but I used it to gain attention for myself. I was impressed at how easily it was to impress others littler than myself, but I didn't use it as a means of evangelization or a way to help them grow. Unlike Don Bosco, I wasn't ready for that. Thinking about your parish growing up, to whom was it dedicated? Can you share with the others there some of your stories about parish life? Were you and your family involved in the parish life, and how? We'll take a few minutes to share some memories of parish life when we were growing up. And we're back. Hopefully you had some good stories to share. At one time, the church was the center of the community, and almost everything revolved around the parish and the priest or the priests. In my parish, we usually had 3 priests, all Franciscans of the Orders of Friar Minor. Nowadays, even in good Christian families, their lives do not necessarily, or even usually, center around God and the church. We've lost a great deal in losing this center. As Guinellians, part of our charism is to reawaken the need for God and to rekindle love for Him. We all have need of God, and we find Him, or should be able to find Him, in our parish church. Marcelina, in her work in her home and with her young friends, promoted this focus on the church and parish life. Your third piece of homework is to write about your parish involvement where you are now. To whom is your local parish dedicated? Do you even know? What do you know about the saint or the saints to whom it's dedicated? How often do you go to the parish? And what do you do there? And can you think of ways to increase your participation in the local parish life? So, this concludes our first talk for today. We'll take a break and get back together this afternoon. Okay, in this second brief talk, we'll look at the priests who served Marcelina and our own parishes growing up. The questions to keep in mind are, did the priests of your parish where you grew up influence you in any way? Was it a good influence or not? So the parish priest, Don Carlo Copini. Although Marcelina was baptized by Don Bartolomeo Frassi, the parish priest of Pianello of her adolescence was actually Don Carlo Ferrario. He had been at Pianello only 5 years as a parish priest when, in November of 1891, he died at only 55 years of age. Don Carlo Copini entered the parish of St. Martin of Tours in Pianello on July 6, 1862, the year after the death of Papa Alessandro. He was a young priest who, at one time, had been the secretary to Giuseppe Manzini, a leader in the unification process of Italy. But Manzini was also anti-clerical. As soon as the young Copini, already a seminarian, realized Manzini's opposition to his faith, he abandoned his position and returned to the seminary. He had taken the position to help earn money for his studies. He had no intention of giving up his dream as a priest. Copini was then ordained on June 5, 1852, by Monsignor Carlo Romano. When he came to Pianello, he had already worked in 2 other parishes. Even there, he had been particularly attentive to the formation of the youth. When he came to Pianello, he especially concentrated his efforts with a group of young girls he found already gathering for prayers and mutual encouragement, precisely the group started by Marcelina. From the beginning, she showed herself ready and able to work with the new young priest in his desires to help the families of Pianello. She willingly helped him in his efforts to reach and sanctify the families and the entire community entrusted to his care. Like St. Martin, he was generous almost to a fault, and his efforts to instruct and improve the life of his parishioners won him not only the gratitude of the Christian families of the area, but the antagonism of some of the anti-clerics, who, later on, attacked him physically and caused him injuries that would quickly lead to his premature death at age of 54. In July of 1871, Father Copini decided to erect a pious union of the Daughters of Mary Immaculate. Since he had this group of young women who were seeking a way to consecrate their life more fully to the Lord without having to enter a monastery. And just a side note, in the history of the Church, the prevalent idea of the Church hierarchy was that women who wanted to consecrate their life to God had to do so in monasteries. That is, they had to enter the cloister. So women who didn't want to enter the cloister tried to develop ways to consecrate their lives while still remaining in the world, so to speak. The Pious Union of the Ursulines was one such method. This pious union had been started by Angela Merici, and several different branches were begun by various saintly priests and laywomen in many Italian cities. The Pious Union at Pianello, Father Copini put under the patronage of St. Ursula and St. Angela Merici. The first to be inscribed on October 15, 1871, were Marcelina, the 2 sisters Maddalena and Elizabeth Minata, who were cousins of Marcelina, Josephina Bonvino, and Teresa Dalero. Shortly before this, in August of the same year, Marcelina had brought her sister Dina to the Canossians, so Dina did not form part of the initial group, but would later join. In April of 1872, Marcelina was elected as the superior of the Pious Union. That fall, in October, the five would emit their first religious profession. They would, however, continue to live in their respective homes, each living the rule given them as daughters of Mary Immaculate. Father Carlo, however, continued to dream big. He hoped for a regular foundation, and so when the opportunity came, he opened up a small hospice to welcome and educate orphans, with a space for those daughters who remained single. He knew instantly who to name as superior and collaborator of this first work, Marcelina Posata. Marcelina immediately saw in this opportunity the will of God and a chance to leave the occupations of her immediate family and open her heart to the love of God, prayer, service, and service to his poor. Once again, her leadership qualities shone and were sharpened. Marcelina used every opportunity to grow in love and obedience to God and his will for her. For those who take the time every day, as we as Daughters of St. Mary Providence have that time at Daily Examen, to reflect on where God led them that day and how well or poorly they responded to the events experienced, to the people encountered, etc., it becomes a means to grow closer to God each day. Every moment is an opportunity given us by God to help us on our way to him. Today, at the evening examen, take that time to really reflect on where God was trying to lead you this day and how well or not you followed him. This is a bit of homework not just for today, but for every day of the rest of our religious lives. There's no other homework for today, but I do ask that you think about Marcelina's love of prayer and her concentrated efforts to follow in everything the will of God. Let her love of his will fill your heart, and ask her to help you in your efforts to know, love, and follow God and his will for you. So, we survived our first 2 days together, and God bless you, and we hopefully will see you tomorrow.